Good morning and welcome to this lecture. We were discussing graphs in the previous class. I think we had done the position time graph and we had seen the various type of position time graph. The last graph that we were seeing were graph which did not have constant slope. The slope of position time graph gives us, what does the slope of position time graph give us? What does the slope of position time graph give us? Do we remember this? No one? Don't remember it? What's the slope of position time graph tells us? No one remembers it? Oh. No one remembers what is the slope of position time graph, beta? Please tell me. Do we remember what we had done in the last class, beta?
Yes, sir.
What is the position of, what does the slope of position time graph give us, beta? Slope of position time graph, what does it give us? Do we know it or don't we don't remember it? Tell me fast so that I can move forward. You don't remember the slope of position time graph? Either you remember it or you don't remember it, beta. Why we are taking so long for answering? Either you know it or you don't know it. No one knows it. Okay. So in today's class, what we are going to do is we are going to move ahead and see some questions in the position time graph. And let us start with some questions. And I hope that we are able to solve those questions. Since no one is telling me what is the slope of position time graph, let us see if we can remember it in a question. No one remembers it. How many of you actually study when you go back home? Okay, so some students do study. We don't remember what is the slope of position time graph. Don't remember it. We don't remember it, then that is a big problem because we did it yeah, last class only. If we forget what we have done in the last class, it becomes very difficult for us to go ahead. Anyways, let me try my luck with some questions. Let us see, the other class has disappeared. Is the other class there? I can't see you, beta. Chalo, let us start with this question. I hope we can do something with this question. Which of the following graphs represents uniform motion? Which of the following graph represent uniform motion? Uniform motion means motion with uniform velocity. Yes, which of the following?
Yes, sir.
A, sir, well done. Even if we talk about the graph number C, the graph number C also represents uniform motion, but here the displacement or the position does not change. This basically represents a particle at
Rest.
rest, is also uniform motion in one kind, but here they are talking about a body moving with uniform motion. So the correct option has to be Option A, well done. So we seem to recollect things. That is good. Let me now move on to the next question. Remember, the questions that are going to come may be pretty simple, and what we have discussed in the class may be of a pretty higher level. That is the way that things should be. In class, we discuss a lot of things which are of very high level, but the question that are going to come in your JEE may not be of such a high level. This is the next problem. The displacement time graph, they normally say displacement time graph, they should have said position time graph. The displacement time graph for two particles A and B are in straight lines inclined at an angle of 30 and 60 degrees with the time axis. What is the ratio of velocities of VA is to VB? So this is question number 2. I hope the other class is there with me, everyone. So what about the answer for this one? I'll give you 1 minute to think about it. Okay, so let me solve this for you. It should not have taken so much of time. I think you have forgotten what is the slope of position time graph or displacement time graph refers. Well, the slope of position time graph or displacement time graph gives us velocity, my dear friends.
Sir,
If it
answer D, sir.
answer D, it has taken a lot of time for you to calculate this. I'm not very happy with that. I gave the same question with your NEET students, and they seem to be much more hardworking than you. They gave me answer in 5 seconds, and for you it has taken almost 3 minutes. Not very impressed with how you are faring up. I'm very sad to say that. I hope that things will improve. They gave me the answer in 5 seconds, and I keep on telling them that they are doing a lot better than you guys. Sorry to say that, but that remains a fact. In fact, there I have finished motion in 1D, and today I will start motion in 2D, and I am still lingering around with 1D with you guys. That's sad state of affairs. Anyways, let us move on. How do I get velocity from the displacement time graph? From the slope of displacement time graph, we get velocity, my dear friends. From the slope of the graph of A, I will get the velocity of A. From the slope of graph of B, I will get velocity of B. To get the slope, I have to find the tan of this angle. So tan of 30 degrees, which is 1 by root 3, that will be the velocity of particle A. Tan of 60 degrees, which is root 3, that will be the velocity of particle B. VA by VB, 1 by root 3 divided by divided by root 3. Here comes the answer, my dear friends. 1:3. So that is the answer that we are looking at. As simple as it gets, and you should have done it very quickly. I'm not very happy with what you are doing, but I hope better sense will prevail. Better sense will prevail, and probably for the next question, you might surprise me and give me the answer quickly. Try to understand better the type of question that you are going to encounter in the exam will be of this pattern and this level only. If you can't do them quickly enough, there will be not much difference between you and the person who is sitting next to you. And then you are just among one of the 15 lakh participants that appear for JEE. Something has to make you special. And since I am teaching you physics, when you go and sit in the exam, it's not you that is giving the exam, it's me. And I would not be impressed with my performance, but what I am seeing here, I would be disgusted. Anyways, from discussion to happiness, let us try and do this one. From the following displacement time graph, find the velocity.
Sir, 1 by root 3, sir.
The answer came very quickly. That is good. But again, you made the same mistake that you should not have made. From the following displacement time graph, they have called it the displacement time graph, but it is not actually displacement time graph. It is not displacement time graph. It is time displacement graph. Don't rush to your answers very quickly. Try it again. From the following graph, let us not call it by names. From the following graph, find out the velocity v of the moving body, and the answer is
Root 3, sir.
base root 3, sir. How did you get root 3, sir? Remember, whenever we are drawing the displacement time or position time graph, position is plotted on the y-axis as time is plotted on the x-axis. Is the angle with the x-axis or the time axis that is taken, not the angle with the displacement or the position wala axis. It's always, and remember, this is always the angle with the time axis. The angle with the time axis here is 60 degrees. So the velocity of this particle will be tan of 60 degrees. And the answer would be root 3. I hope you understand this. Yes or no? No, yes? Well done then. We are picking up some speed. That is good. Then comes the next question. I hope everyone is noting down the questions. You don't have to note down the question. You just have to solve the question. Stay happy thereafter. Here we have got a displacement time graph again. I should not call it displacement time graph. I should call it position time graph. You have to find out the average velocity. Remember, average velocity you have to calculate from 0 to 5 seconds. Can I have quick answers for this one? What is the average velocity from 0 to 5 seconds? The time is running fast. Can I have, my dear friends, the average velocity from 0 to 5 seconds? Yes or no? No, yes.
Sir, 2 meter per second.
Is it plus or it is minus? Because plus or minus makes a lot of difference. Because plus and minus tells us the direction, and without direction, vectors have no meaning. Yes. Is it plus or is it minus? To find the average velocity, you find what, my dear friends? You find total displacement divided by total time. Yes or no? To find out total distance, this is the final position RF. And this,
-2, sir.
it has taken a lot of time for you to give me the answer -2 because both the options are present in the four options. I did not give you the four options. Both the options are present, +4 as well as -4. Final position minus initial position is, you can look, final position is -10. Initial position is 0, divided by time is 5. So you cannot get +2 from any angle. This is one way of doing it. The second way of doing it is by the slope of the graph. You just join a straight line from the initial position to the final position, my dear friend. This is a graph with negative slope. You can calculate the slope of this graph. The slope of this graph will be 10 divided by 5, 2. But this graph has a negative slope, my dear friend. This graph has a negative slope, my dear friend. So answer will be -2. So you could have done this in two different ways. I have told you the two different ways. I hope we understand this. Yes or no? No, yes. Let us now move on to the next one and see how do we fare with this one. Here comes the question and I await your answers quickly. Quick answers serve a lot of purpose. Quick answers, quick answers. Figure shows the displacement time graph of a body. What is the ratio of speed in the first second and that of the next 2 seconds? Ratio of speeds, my dear friends. Ratio of speeds. And the answer is do I have an answer coming from somewhere? One of the class has disappeared. I don't know where they have gone. I hope where they were there, they can listen.
3:1, sir.
3 is
Option
to
C.
1. No, that is not correct, beta. Speed in the first second. This is from 0 to 1 seconds is the slope of this graph. This is the speed in the first second, V1. Speed in the next 2 seconds is the slope of this graph. If I find the slope of graph number 1, that will be 30 perpendicular divided by 1. So it will be 30. Graph number 2, if I find the slope, it will be negative. So velocity is negative, but speed is never negative. It will be 30 divided by 2. Perpendicular is 30. Base is 2. So it is 15. What is the ratio of speed? It is 30 divided by 15. I don't know how did you get 3 is to 1. It is 2 is to 1. Do we understand this or it has gone above our head saying bye-bye? Do we understand this? Yes or no? Okay, here since we have talked about speed, since we have talked about speed, remember sometimes they might give you distance time graph, The slope of distance time graph will give you what? The slope of position time graph gives us velocity. The slope of displacement time graph, if they say, gives us velocity. What does the slope of distance time graph give us?
Speed, sir.
Well done, it will give us speed. Now remember, speed can never be negative. That implies slope of distance time graph can never be negative. Slope of distance time graph can't be negative. Do we understand this? Because if that slope is negative, that means distance is decreasing with time. Whenever a body is traveling, distance never decreases. We are always traveling. Distance is always positive. It always increases. Do we understand this? Yes or no? No or yes? I hope everyone is noting this down. So if we talk about this graph is a graph between distance and time from 0 to A. From 0 to A, if you look, this graph has got a positive slope. This graph is possible from 0 to A. The graph of distance time graph can be like this. But if I look from A to B, look at this graph. It's a graph between distance and time. From A to B, is this graph possible? From O to A, this graph is possible because it has a positive slope. The slope is decreasing. From A to B, this graph is not possible. Why it is not possible?
Slope will be negative, sir.
Because the slope is negative, distance is decreasing with time, it cannot happen. So remember these things about position time graph and displacement time graph. Speed is always positive. Velocity can be positive or negative because it is a vector, and positive and negative refer to its direction. Do we understand this? Yes or no? No, yes. Then comes the next graph, my dear friends. What is the next graph that we are going to do? And the next graph is VT graph, velocity time graph. Now from velocity time graph, we can find out two things. Fatafat, tell me what are the two things that you can find out. In fact, three things probably. What are the three things that you can find out from the velocity time graph? Tell me fatafat. The slope of VT graph will give me what? Huh?
Velocity, sir.
Slope of velocity time graph will give me acceleration. Slope of velocity time graph will give me acceleration. Now, when we talk about acceleration, there are two types of acceleration. One is the instantaneous acceleration. One is the average acceleration. How do I get the instantaneous acceleration and how do I get the average acceleration? If I find the slope at any point, any instant, if I find out the slope at any point or any instant, how do I find it out? By differentiating velocity with time, dv by dt. If I find the slope at any point, that will give me the instantaneous velocity. To find out the average velocity, I have to find out the slope between 2 points. And how do I find the slope between 2 points? v2 minus v1 divided by t2 minus t1. If acceleration is constant, then what happens with instantaneous velocity? Instantaneous acceleration and average acceleration, are they same or are they different? If acceleration is constant, instantaneous acceleration will be equal to average acceleration. So you find out the slope at any point, or you find out the slope between any 2 points. It will also be same. What is the next thing that you can calculate from the velocity time graph? Area. Area of velocity time graph gives us what? It gives us displacement. The area of velocity time graph gives us both. It gives us displacement as well as distance travel. What do I mean by this? How can I get both from here? So let us take an example. I hope you know how to find out the area of simple geometrical figures. Let us say this is V and this is T. And here I have some VT graph. Here I have some VT graph. Which previous slide, beta? We are on velocity time graph. This is the slide of velocity time graph, beta. Which previous slide you are talking about? We have done position time graph. The last slide was just a question. The last slide was the slope of distance time graph. The slope of distance time graph gives us speed, and it cannot be negative because speed is never negative. So this part, the blue part of the curve is not possible. Only the pink part of the curve is possible. Speed cannot be negative. The slope of distance time graph cannot be negative. The slope of velocity time graph though gives us acceleration, average or instantaneous. The area under the velocity time graph gives us displacement or distance. Now you can calculate this area. Yes or no? This is the area of a rectangle. Yes or no? Thank God we know this. Then this is the area of a triangle. We can calculate this area. Yes or no? I can break this area into two if you want to. The entire figure is a trapezium. You know how to find the area of the trapezium. If you don't remember, you can find the area of this triangle. You can find the area of this rectangle. You can find out all those areas. All those areas will give us distance and displacement. But remember, displacement is a vector. Now, to find out displacement, we have to treat some areas as positive and some areas as negative. Which do you think? Common sense is no physics. Which areas do you think would be positive and which areas, my dear friend, do you think would be negative for displacement only? Yes.
So above x-axis, the area which is will be positive, sir.
Well done. All these blue areas, my dear friends, which are above time axis will be positive, and this small red one,
area will be negative.
the small red one would be negative, but this is only for displacement. What about distance, my dear friends? For distance, all areas are taken as
Positive.
all areas are taken as positive. Do we understand this? Yes or no? No, yes. It has gone above what I'm saying. Bye bye, bye bye. I'm going. Don't worry about me. Give you 2 minutes to note this down. Have we noted it down, bacha?
Yes, sir.
That takes us to the types of VT graphs, and it is pretty simple. The first type of VT graph Simply looks like a straight line which is parallel to x-axis. X-axis, remember, is the time axis, and y-axis, remember, is the velocity of v-axis. Again, I always move from A to B. Time always increases, time never decreases. This is graph number 1. What information you can get from graph number 1? Tell me fatafat. Graph number 1, obviously this is a graph between V and T. So the first thing it tells me is about velocity. Velocity is positive. Do we see this? Yes or no? Velocity is positive. Is the velocity changing? Velocity is not changing. Velocity is constant. Do we see this? Yes or no? What about the slope of this graph? The slope of this graph is 0. What does the slope of this graph tell me? Give us.
Time is traced.
Yes, beta? The slope of this graph gives us acceleration, and acceleration is 0. Acceleration is 0. That will make velocity constant. Do we understand this?
Yes, sir.
The area under this graph, you can calculate the area under this graph. Dung, 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 dung. This area will give us the displacement or distance travel. Do we understand this?
Yes, sir.
So very, very simple things. The area is very simply, it's a rectangle, length multiplied by breadth. It is above time axis. So for displacement, also it is positive. For distance, it is always positive. We don't have to worry about that. I'll give you a minute to win it. Have we noted it down?
Yes, sir.
That takes me to graph number 2. And this is how graph number 2 looks like. What can you say about graph number 2? Graph number 2. What we can say about graph number 2? Tell me fat.
Velocity is increasing with respect to time, sir.
First of all, the first thing that you can say, velocity is positive. Yes or no? It's on the positive side.
Yes,
Velocity is changing, right?
Yes, sir.
Velocity is positive. Velocity is changing. In fact, velocity is increasing, as you can see.
Time is increasing.
Yeah. What about the slope of this graph? Slope, is it constant or not?
Constant, sir.
Slope is constant. What about the slope? Is it positive or negative?
Positive, sir.
Slope is positive. Slope is constant. From there, you can tell me acceleration is constant and positive. See, acceleration is constant and positive. Velocity is positive. Both are in the same direction. Therefore, your velocity is increasing. Do we understand this? Yes or no? No, yes. Okay, now we are gathering some speed. That is good. What is the next type of graph? The next type of graph looks like this. This is graph number 3. What can you say about graph number 3?
Velocity is negative, sir.
Velocity is positive. How do you see velocity getting negative? It is not going below 0. Okay. Velocity is changing.
Downwards.
In fact, velocity is decreasing. As you can see,
Downwards.
velocity is decreasing. What about the slope of this graph? Slope of this graph
Constant negative.
constant and negative. Slope is negative, not velocity, beta. Please look carefully. Which graph is this? Slope is negative and slope is constant. That means acceleration is constant and acceleration is negative. Now open your eyes and see. Acceleration is negative. but velocity is positive. Velocity going like this, acceleration going like this, and therefore your velocity is decreasing. Do we understand this? Yes or no? No, yes. 1 minute you have to show me your talent and write it down, because we have to move on quickly, very, very quickly to the question.
Done, sir.
Done, sir. Then, sir. This, sir. Question, sir. Do it. Fatafat, sir. The velocity time graph, VT graph of a body traveling in a straight line is shown in the figure. The displacement and the distance traveled by the body in 6 seconds are 6 seconds. You have to find out the displacement and the distance. It is a very simple problem, man, and I hope that I would get the answer fast, 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 fast. Dun, 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 dun. It's simple. Remember, the first thought that should come to your mind when you are doing a question is that the question is simple. I hope everyone is studying. Yes, my dear friends. Okay, it's time that I do it for you. Is that so? You have to find out the areas. Okay, the first area is this area. Can you tell me how much is this area? This is the area of a rectangle. Yes. How much is this?
8 meters.
Well done. It is 8. Let me not call the units. It's 8. What about this one? It's simple rectangle, my dear friends.
4.
4. What about this one?
4.
For displacement, the blue areas are positive and the red areas are negative. So the displacement becomes 8 plus 4, is 12, minus 4. Displacement becomes plus 8. Do we understand this? Yes or no? No, yes. My displacement delta R becomes plus 8. Do we understand this? Yes or no? What about the distance travel? I call it L, distance traveled. It's always positive. So 8 is positive, 4 is positive. The niche wala 4, the red 4 is also positive.
16, sir.
It is 16 meters. And those are the answers. Displacement is 8 and the distance traveled is 16. So the correct option is option D. I see a lot of girls chit-chatting at the back. I hope that we are chit-chatting not about what's happening on Instagram, but we're chit-chatting about what's happening in the class. Remember, it's a myth that human brain can multitask. Human brain can only do one thing at a time. If you're talking, you are simply talking, and you will not get anything from that talking. Also, you will not get anything from the class that you are sitting in. Human brain cannot multitask. We are the dumbest creature in the universe, and we can't multitask. You can only do one thing at a time. So if you're chit-chatting, do it with all your heart, because that is what is going to be asked in the JEE. Chit chat. How much can you chit chat? It's a good quality to have, because it can give you a lot of promising jobs. Like you can become a YouTuber and you can talk about the universe. You may not know nothing about the universe, but you can talk a lot. You can become an RJ by chit-chatting. Keep on chit-chatting about things that you don't have any idea about. But chit-chatting will never land you up in an IIT. No chit-chatter is an IIT. Okay, having said that, let us move ahead in life and let us see what is the next question that is coming for us. Which of the following velocity time graph is not possible? Now, why I'm putting all these questions? Because these are the type of questions that are coming these days. Which of the following time velocity time graph not possible? Yes, beta. Which of the following graphs are not possible?
D, sir.
Why D, sir? Because in graph number D, at one time the particle has two velocities. That is not possible. At one time, he is not a god. God can be omnipotent and omnipresent. He can be present at multiple places at one single time. Maybe he's a higher dimension being, but this being is not a higher dimension being. He cannot be present at multiple points at the same time. He cannot have multiple velocities at the same point at the same time. Therefore, the graph number D, that are the D is not possible. Do you understand this? Yes or no? Concentrating in the class and not chit-chatting leads to some very favorable results, and you might land up somewhere near an IIT. But that too when you study at home. Here comes the next one, my dear friends. And let us see who can give me the answer for this one first. For certain bodies, the VT graph is shown in the figure. The ratio of applied forces. Now, we have not discussed forces, but I know that in your previous classes, especially standard 9th, you would have heard about F is equal to ma, and I'm banging on that that knowledge that you would have. F is equal to ma, and look at the question and tell me the answer. Which number represents the ratios? There are some positive and negative. Positive, negative refers to direction. I hope you know this. What are the ratio applied forces for the interval AB and BC? And your answer is first. Just my dear friends. No answer. Shame. Trying to solve the problem may probably help you in getting the answer, even if it's not the right one. It may not be the right one. I'm not after the right answer. I'm only after you trying. How do you get this? Yes, intervals A to B. If I have to find out from interval A to B, you have to find out the applied force. How will I find the applied force? I will find the acceleration. To find the acceleration, I will find the slope of this graph. This straight line. What is the slope of this straight line? That will be the acceleration. That will be tan of 30.
1
Yes.
by root 3, sir.
Plus or minus, beta, you are just treating
Plus, sir.
vector as a, what should I say? In Hindi we call it sotela beta. In English we call it stepson, stepdaughter. If you treat vector as your stepdaughter, that stepdaughter is going to retaliate and is going to kill you one day, and he is going to kill you in the examination hall. And then you might regret why we treated it as a stepdaughter or a stepson. The first acceleration is positive, 1 by root 3 plus 1 by root 3. Please don't neglect it. The second one is tan of 60. It is minus 1 by root 3 because this is negative, my dear friends. Vectors, and more vectors. So the answer is minus 1 by 3. Do you understand this? Yes or no? No, I've written it wrongly. It's not minus 1 by 3. It's minus root 3. Sorry. Do we understand this? Yes or no? Please don't forget. Please don't forget. Vectors have direction. Plus and minus matters. It also matters in JEE. Plus marks are only going to get you in the JEE. Minus marks are going to land you up in the YouTuber category. You would be making videos and probably making much more money than a stupid IITian. But then for that, you need to have talent. To become a YouTuber, you need a talent. To become an RJ, to chit chat about everything in the universe, you need talent. You can become IITian without any talent. The only talent that you should have, is concentrate on one thing at a time. Because that is what human brains can do. We cannot multitask. We can only do one thing at a time. Just steady with all your concentration, my dear friends, and you might very well land up in the IIT, which is right at stone throw from your house. You might have crossed the IIT, you will not be allowed inside it, probably. Probably one day you will end up with the t-shirts of those IITs hanging around your neck. T-shirts don't hang around the neck. Medals do. Yes, my dear friends, what is the answer for this one? Fast, fast, fast. I don't have the entire time in the universe. From the adjoining curve, following, representing the velocity time graph of a particle, what is the acceleration along OA, OB? Sorry, OA, AB, and BC. C is not given, so I'll make C. C must be here somewhere. Yes, my dear friends. Any answer? Hello, sir. Can you hear me? Who is this? But I can't hear anyone today. Nah, beta, you can't. I can't hear you. Not a problem, beta. I hope you can follow the class. Yes. What is the answer for this one? What is the slope of this one? Eh?
A, sir.
The answer is A. That is the only option that has a negative slope. But when in exam, they might have more options with negative. Let us find out the slope of this one. What is the slope of this one? O2A. Tell me. It is +1. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
The slope of this is 0.
Yes,
The
sir.
slope of this is
minus 0.5.
Why minus? Because
Slope is negative.
yes, my dear friends, that is how we do it. Well done. Okay. Now tell me this one fatafat, and then I'll move on to the last thing of this chapter. Fatafat. Remember, these are the type of questions that are in fashion these days, and everyone loves fashion, especially girls. Boys may not. But these questions are in fashion. They are fashionable questions. Let's see if you can stay abreast with the fashion trend of today. Velocity time graph of two cars starting from rest at the same time are shown in the figure. Graph shows tongue, 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 tongue. Yes, my dear friends, which is the correct option? When I talk about acceleration, they are talking about instantaneous acceleration. When they are talking about instantaneous acceleration, they are talking about accelerations at any given point. So if I talk about acceleration at the 2 points where angles are given, which acceleration is more? Initial velocities are all zeros. Yes, my dear friends.
A, sir.
A, sir. Very bad, sir. Initial velocity of A is greater than that of initial velocity of B. Beta, we are from maths background. This is velocity time graph. Both of them start from 0. So both the velocities are 0 at the initial time. Do we understand this? We should understand this. If we don't understand this, there's something wrong with our eyes. That instead of velocity, it starts seeing position. We should not trust our eyes so much that they start seeing position when they should see velocity. So the velocity time graph, first option is definitely wrong because both the velocities are 0. Which is the correct option? And the correct option is option C. Acceleration of A at any point, the graph is steeper. It's a velocity time graph, my dear friends. The slope of velocity time graph gives me acceleration. If the slope is more, acceleration is more. If the slope is less, acceleration is less. If the slope is constant, acceleration is constant. If the slope is positive, acceleration is positive. If the slope is zero, acceleration is zero. If the slope is negative, acceleration is negative. Remember that for velocity time graph, for position time graph, if the slope is positive and the velocity is positive, the slope is negative, and the velocity is negative, the slope is zero, then the velocity is zero, but that is for position time graph. Please look at the y-axis. Please see what is written on the y-axis. If it is written velocity, it has to be velocity time graph. I hope we have made sense. That takes us to the last part of this chapter, and that is normally not taught in class. Acceleration time graph. So fatafat write it. Acceleration time graph. What about acceleration time graph? The first point, slope of acceleration time graph. No one is going to ask you that slope because that slope is actually not in your course. That is known as jerk. That tells us the rate of change of acceleration. When you're sitting in a bus and the bus suddenly you get a jerk. Because that time the bus is accelerating and the acceleration is also changing, and that is why you get a jerk. That jerk. That is how I remember jerk. Rate of change of acceleration is jerk. So slope of AT graph does not give us anything more, but it's the area of AT graph that is of importance. What does area of AT graph give us? Now this is where most of the students they make a mistake. Remember, area of AT graph gives us not velocity but change in velocity. Please remember this word, change in velocity. Delta V. That means it gives us V2 minus V1. I hope you understand this. Yes or no? Okay. Please note it down, bacha. And I hope you take my comments and jokes seriously. I'm not jokingly. I'm not serious. I just want you to concentrate on one thing, beta. And please be careful, because what happens is sometimes when we are careless, that is when we make stupid mistakes. I know that you know that's a VT graph. You would have seen it, but in a haste, we make mistakes. So the simplest type of graph which will come to you would be like this. Oops. This is the most likely graph that will come to you. What we can understand from this graph? Remember, I always write the axis. This is T, this is A. What we can remember, what we can understand by this graph, graph number 1?
Acceleration is constant, sir.
Right. Read the thing. Acceleration is constant. Is it positive or is it negative?
Positive, sir.
So, see, it is very simple. Do we understand this, yes or no? If I find the area under this graph, bacha, whatever the area is, it's a rectangle. The area of this graph will give me what? Area will give me change in velocity. Now, when I say change in velocity, I will mean VB minus VA. Do we understand this, bacha? That is the thing that you need to understand. Do not make the mistake of writing area under acceleration time graph as velocity, because area under acceleration time graph does not give us velocity. it gives us change in velocity. Are we ready for one question, please? And here comes the question, my dear friend. Dung, dung. So here comes the question. What I'm going to draw is a acceleration time graph of a particle. This is the AT graph of a particle. The first question that I'm going to ask, not VT, it's AT. The first question I'm going to ask, is this particle moving with uniform? Is the motion uniform? Is this particle having a uniform motion? Or is it a motion with acceleration?
Uniform motion, sir.
Look at the y-axis. That is acceleration. The particle has acceleration, bacha. How can the motion be uniform? It is a motion with constant acceleration. Do we understand this? Uniform motion means motion with uniform velocity. Beta, here the velocity is not uniform. Open your eyes. Look at the 4% of the universe that I see. It is AT graph, not VT graph, beta. It's AT graph. Acceleration is constant, not velocity. Do we understand this? Remember, these are the things that you might make a mistake. If you have to make a mistake, make it now. Acceleration here is 5 meter per second square. Time here is 2 seconds. Time here is 4 seconds. Given that velocity at 2 seconds is 1 meter per second square, the question is find the velocity at 4 seconds. Can you do it for me? Remember, look at the graph, look at the y-axis. What is on y-axis? What is on x-axis? Then only make your answer. Then only think about your answers. A to B. How do I get the velocity at 0.4 or 4 seconds? We know the velocity at 0 seconds. We know the velocity. Okay, beta. I understand your mic is not working. Don't worry. We know the velocity at 2 seconds is given as 1. We have to find the velocity at 4 seconds. How do I find it out? And how do I find it out? It's very simple. Yes. So I have to find out this area. Yes or no? How much is this area, bacha?
20 meters per second.
20 meters per second, right? You don't have to see the unit. I can understand your unit. It is plus 20 because it is above t-axis. Okay. So the area is plus 20. What does this area give me, my dear friends? What does this area give me? It gives me change in velocity. So it will be velocity at 4 seconds minus velocity at 2 seconds. Do we understand this? Then I can get velocity at 4 seconds will be plus 20 and V2 will come here plus 1. So it will be plus 21 meter per second. If this question comes in the JEE, they will also give you 20. They will also give you 21. And if you just find out the area and instantly give the answer as 20, that would be the wrong answer because that is change in velocity. Do we understand this, bacha? Remember, change in velocity is what we get from the area under AT graph. Let me summarize this for you all. We are done with this. Let me summarize all the graph, what we get from which graph. I've already summarized it a lot of times. Let me summarize it once again. The first thing that we did was position time graph. The slope of position time graph gives us velocity. The slope of distance time graph gives us speed. Speed cannot be negative. The slope of distance time graph cannot be negative. But the slope of position time graph can be negative because positive or negative refers to the direction. Yes or no? No, yes. Then the next graph that we saw was the velocity time graph, VT graph. V is on y-axis, T is on x-axis. Slope of VT graph gives me acceleration. It can have positive acceleration, it can have negative acceleration, it can have zero acceleration, it can have variable acceleration. It also gives me displacement and distance. We find out the area under VT graph. VT graph gives me the most information. The area under VT graph can give me displacement as well as distance. For displacement, above time axis areas are positive, below time axis areas are taken negative. The last thing that is left is AT graph. AT graph only gives me one information, and that information is The area under 80 graph gives me change in velocity. And with this, we come to a staggering end of this first chapter, which is normally the most difficult one to encounter because it has a lot of things. And from next class, we'll move on to the next chapter. And if you have understood this, the next chapter is going to be a cakewalk. And we will work on that cake. We'll eat it as well on the way. Let's see. I hope you will study before coming to the class in the next class. And I'll see you in the next class. Take care. Have a nice day. If there is any doubt, you can always ask me at any point in time. Take care. Bye bye, bacha.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.